Hello, my name is Abigail Keilberg, and I am going to be talking about the Northern California wildfires of summer 2021, more specifically, the effects of wildfires, especially those in Northern California, on Earth's spheres. So, to begin, how do wildfires start and what is a wildfire? So, a wildfire is an uncontrolled fire in a wooded area that generally causes mass devastation and affects all of the spheres on Earth. They're becoming increasingly common because of the impacts of climate change and global warming. One I'm going to specifically talk about is the Dixie Fire, which occurred in Northern California this year. It started in July 2021 when a Douglas fir tree fell on a PG&E power line in the Feather River Canyon, and it ignited a fire and burnt nearly 100 million acres across Northern California. This led to about 3 months of devastation and the complete destruction of the town Greenville, which is actually where I have some family from. So that hit pretty close to home for me specifically. So now we'll get into the impacts of wildfires on. Oh, oops. The impacts of wildfires on the geosphere, atmosphere, biosphere, and hydrosphere. So, on the atmosphere, it is affected because ash and debris coming from fires will get into the atmosphere and clog it up, basically causing a big cloud of just pollution. So, this in turn blocks the sun's UV rays and makes the surrounding area cool, which causes crops to die and affects the economy in a negative way. Then the biosphere, it's affected by wildfires when oxygen in the atmosphere drops. This causes mammals to not be able to breathe because the air is just unsafe because of all the pollution. And it also destroys homes to many wildlife that are being destroyed by the fire and just burnt down by the just mass amounts of flames. When homes for mammals are burnt down like this, it causes a lot of displacement for animals and also just harms our ecosystem. The effects on the geosphere are interesting because they are more positive than negative. However, there are still some negative aspects, so we'll get into that. So, the nutrients in the soil are absorbed into the soil, or so the nutrients in plants are absorbed into the soil when the vegetation above the ground is burnt. So when the nutrients absorb into the soil, it makes it more readily available to grow new crops and more vegetation to grow and thrive in coming years. However, most of the nitrogen is absorbed into the atmosphere, so most of these plants end up becoming nitrogen deficient. So ultimately, it's not necessarily a positive in how wildfires affect our ecosystem. Finally, the hydrosphere is affected by mostly things called stormwater runoff and flash floods. So these occur after the soil is burnt, like I mentioned in the geosphere part of this slide. So when the soil is all burnt down like that and the nutrients are being absorbed, it becomes hydrophobic. So the soil is no longer able to absorb any water or anything like that. So stormwater comes out of that, and that is just the stormwater is going to run through from body of water to body of water, tracking chemicals and all sorts of dust and ash emitted by the fire. So then also when the soil burns, it increases the risks of erosion and flash floods, and flash floods are known to be a very easy way for heavy metals and other chemicals to enter the water. So this all causes bad drinking water and can be harmful to aquatic animals who call these areas home. So, battling climate change and global warming. As you guys can probably tell, wildfires are increasing in severity and quantity every year, which is destroying towns, vegetation, and causing displacement of animals and humans. Um, it's causing the reason why wildfires are being caused by climate change and how it's having such a large effect on it is the fact that the forests are just becoming extremely dry and for longer periods of time because snow is melting sooner and there's less precipitation. So this leads to easy ignition, like I talked about in the Dixie Fire, when all that had to happen was a tree falling on a power line for almost 1 million acres to burn. So these are all necessarily or generally human causes, because if we weren't here, the power lines wouldn't be here. And it's not just power lines, but many have happened from things like baby showers, when people blow up little explosives for gender reveals. And it's just very sad to see how humankind is kind of just destroying itself. So, in turn, additionally, emissions from these fires will lead to the worsening of global warming. So, when just chemicals and gases are released into the atmosphere after a fire burns through a forest or anything, it just clogs up the atmosphere, like I said before, and it leads to a worsening of global warming. So ultimately, from this, you can learn to listen to science and understand that global warming is a real threat, and there are things that we can start to do about it. So all we need to do is come together and work hard to battle it. Thank you for listening.